So I saw more than 130 films released in 2024. Which 10 do I think are the worst? Hi, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender, and I'm gonna get to my favorite films of 2024 soon. But before I make that video, I thought it would be fun to share with you, what were the 10 films of this previous year I really hated. I really struggled with, like a terrible time at the movies. These were the 10 that truly sucked. Let's start with number 10, Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1.
You're not right?
Yes, sir. She was just funning me. Go ahead.
So this was a movie my dad really wanted to see, and I can maybe get my dad to like 2 or 3 films in a theater every year. He doesn't go very often. He's a big Kevin Costner fan, and I like Kevin Costner. Like, I kind of grew up with him in the 90s and things, and, you know, this was a passion project movie of his I had been hearing about for months, and it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, and I was intrigued. I'm like, wow, he's making 2, potentially 3 or 4, 3-hour films. Like, he spent millions of his own money to get off the ground. He'd been wanting to make these movies for years, decades. So, you know, I'll go see the first one. You know, I'll go in with an open mind. And, this wasn't, the most dreadful movie I've ever seen. There were elements of it I thought worked okay. The cinematography at times is pretty to look at. But this is an unwieldy narrative of so many different factors, different characters hopping around every which way. And by the 3rd hour, I just didn't care anymore. I was like, this should be a TV series. This should be like an 8-part, 10-part limited series or the first season of a dramatic show. It never really felt like a movie to me. I don't know if you felt that way, if you've seen this film. And then on top of that, he's balancing all these characters and storylines, and you get to the end and there's a 3-4 minute tease of part 2, and then they canceled part 2. I'm assuming it'll come out at some point, even if they just drop it on Max or something. But then it's okay, so you go through all of that in part 1, and then there's not an immediate part 2 to watch. So I just I don't know what to do with this movie. You know, I have thought from the beginning, Kevin Costner should have just made one big film. Horizon. One movie. Don't make it into part 2 and 3 and 4 and things, especially at 3 hours long. Just make one film. And it might have been better. If it had been tighter all the way through and there weren't so many characters to balance out and everything, I think Horizon might have been more of a 7 out of 10, maybe an 8 out of 10. But the movie that it is now, I was very happy when the credits started rolling, and I'm not interested in watching any future parts of this saga. Number 9, Tuesday.
From now on, we're gonna do what's best for you.
So this is a film that premiered at the Telluride Film Festival back in 2023, and then I think got a limited release in the spring of 2024. And so what happened was, I was actually at the Telluride Film Festival that year, and this was on my list of movies to check out before I left on my final day there. I had it on my schedule for the afternoon, and I thought that morning, I said, you know, I could go see Tuesday at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever it was, or I can take the gondola over the mountain and go for a nature walk, go have a nice lunch. What do you think I chose? I chose the latter. I chose to skip Tuesday and go for a little adventure for a few hours. I was kind of movied out by that point. It was my 4th day or whatever it was, and I needed a breather in the afternoon. And so I was very relieved when I finally caught up with Tuesday, a year later. I watched it a few months ago on Max, and this thing doesn't work at all. And when it ended, I was like, I made the right choice. I made the right choice at Telluride, because although I give the movie a couple points for creativity It's very surreal. Julia Louis-Dreyfus gives, a pretty decent performance in it. I just think that narrative, it needed to find a better way into that story. It's not funny enough. It's not dramatic enough. It didn't find the right tone for the weirdness in that particular film. And I made it all the way to the end, but I was struggling. I was not connecting with that one at all. I think Tuesday was definitely a miss. Number 8, Night Swim.
You need to say something back. Ronan, Marco.
So 2024, as I've talked about here and there, was a great year for horror cinema. So many wonderful, scary movies from the spring to the fall. I mean, there's like 5 or 6 I could easily put on a top 10 list. Like, there were so many great films in that genre. But, as is the case every year, we do get some stinkers in the horror genre. Like, even though it's my favorite kind of movie, I love scary films. Like, I will go seek out pretty much anything if it's got, like, a spooky vibe to it, if it's got, like, supernatural creatures, serial killers, scare scenes. Like, that is my jam. I have loved horror films since I was a kid. And so I was catching up with some of the early scary films of 2024 I hadn't seen, and I watched Night Swim, and yeah, that one, like, that ended with a giant thud. It went nowhere. It wasn't scary at all. And it was one of those films where, like, you'd think, a horror film about, like, a haunted swimming pool, of course that's going to be bad. But, I always think about what Roger Ebert said. It's not what the film is about, it's how it is about it. And that might be paraphrasing, something like that he said. I think there is, like, the possibility of a great scary movie about a haunted swimming pool in someone's backyard. Like there's something there. That could be a really great film. But Night Swim, it doesn't have very interesting characters. It's never scary. Like, there's never a moment that, I was taken aback or anything. And the ending, it just kept going on and on and on. I felt bad for Carrie Condon. I'm like, she just got an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. She won the BAFTA, and this is what she's doing. I guess she got a paycheck, and that's great. But yeah, Night Swim, that one didn't work for me. Number 7, The Return.
I know who you are.
A tramp.
If I were free, I'd fight for what was mine. I'd fight for my people.
So for the very first time, I attended the Toronto Film Festival a few months ago. It was a total thrill. I plan to go back every single year. I really love, like, the venues, the movies they play, like, everything about Toronto Film Festival. I was very happy, and I can't wait to go back. I saw, like, 21 movies when I was there, and there were 2 that I didn't care for at all. 2 movies that just, like swing and a miss, like, did not work for me. One of them I don't think has been released yet, but I'm pretty sure The Return is a 2024 official release. This is kind of a take on The Odyssey, starring Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche. These are 2 of my favorite actors, and they give it everything they've got. But this movie is a slog. Like, it's so dull. Like, for the first hour and a half, I was thinking about leaving the theater. That's how bored I was. I was like, this is not working for me. This is like, I would rather be watching any other movie that's playing right now. It got a little better in the final half hour. There was some stuff actually happening and some action and some tension in, like, the last third or so of the movie. So, like, it wasn't, like, a total disaster by any means. But yeah, this one was a definite disappointment considering the subject matter, considering, like, the cast, especially Fiennes and Binoche, re-teaming, like, 3 decades after The English Patient. I expected more out of The Return. This should have been better. It should have been more compelling. This one is a big disappointment. Number 6, Roadhouse.
Nice place you got here. Peaceful.
So I would say there was some hope for this movie. I'm a big Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I will basically watch him in anything. First, he's really hot. And he's very talented too, of course. Nightcrawler, I think his performance in that movie from about a decade ago is one of the finest in the 2010s. Like, with the right material, Jake Gyllenhaal is frickin' fantastic. So I was like, oh, maybe like his version, like this new reinvention of Roadhouse could be interesting. And there's going to be a lot of skin for Jake. So when it dropped directly onto Amazon Prime, I was like, okay, that didn't fill me with much hope. Like, for a movie dropping in like March, April, direct to Amazon Prime, I'm like, okay. But I don't know. I still felt like, well, this could be entertaining. This could be fun. No. No. Roadhouse. The new Roadhouse. I'm trying to remember if there was anything I liked about it besides Jake's, skin. I remember it being just like way too big in the third act. It like the action goes just way too big and crazy, and like it needed to be a more intimate story. It needed to find like more comedic beats. I felt like the movie could have done more with this character, and like by the second half, I had pretty much tuned out outside of watching Jake. I just was like, yeah, this could have been, should have been really a lot better, especially considering like the director, Doug frickin' Lyman. He is great. And so, yeah, I just had higher hopes for that one. It should have at least been like, a 6 out of 10, like breezily entertaining. But yeah, I remember watching that movie with dinner one night and just being like, this is going on way too long. I don't care about these characters or anything that's happening. By the next day, I basically had forgotten I'd even watched it. Number 5, Unfrosted.
I like your Burger King crown.
I like your hairdo. You look like a telephone.
I like your patchy mustache.
I like your patchy mustache.
I like your cadaver teeth.
So here we have the worst comedy of 2024, Unfrosted, directed by Jerry Seinfeld. This movie has a pretty amazing cast, like a who's who of comedic actors, great talents. It was pretty much Melissa McCarthy who got me to watch this. It dropped on Netflix like around May, I want to say. And like, and the other thing was, I grew up with Pop-Tarts. Like, I would say from like age 7 to 11, 12. Like, my favorite breakfast was like, a couple of s'mores Pop-Tarts. Like, I loved Pop-Tarts growing up. And it's not even like real. It's like a fake story of how the Pop-Tart got invented. Jerry Seinfeld directing it, and the cast, I was like, it was like a Sunday night. I'm like, this could be fun. I watched one review of somebody, I won't name them, who liked it. So I thought, okay. Unfrosted is a disaster. I understand why it took so long for the movie to come out. I think it was shot in 2022. Like, it took a couple years until they actually released it, because it's pretty freaking bad. I did not laugh one time. Like, you're watching these great comedic actors scene after scene for however long that movie is. It felt like it went on for 2.5 hours. It might have been like 90 minutes. I don't know. I have always said the worst kind of movie is an unfunny comedy. Like, in a drama, in a horror film, like, even if it's not working, there can be elements that I gravitate to, that I can enjoy. But like, if there's a comedy like Unfrosted that is supposed to make you laugh and it's just not funny at all, like all the way through, you're just like, okay. So like, there's, it's a period film, so there's some interesting costumes. There were a few things to look at, I guess, like beyond just not laughing. But Unfrosted, like, that should have been a movie that was funny. Like, it should have had something about, like, the story, the screenplay, the cast. Something should have worked there, even if it was just a few specific scenes throughout the running time. But, I don't know what went wrong there. I don't know what the ideas were behind making Unfrosted, because it just doesn't work at all. And until looking at my Letterboxd reviews of last year, I had completely forgotten about it. I was like, oh yeah, Unfrosted. That is a movie I watched with dinner one night. I had completely forgotten it even existed. That's the legacy, really, of Unfrosted. Number 4, The Deliverance.
I can smell your nappy pussy.
Hoo boy! Hoo boy was this movie bad. I knew when it was dropping kind of quietly on Netflix at the very end of August last year. I was like, that doesn't bode well. This is another movie, like Unfrosted, I think was shot in 2022. Like in July, August of 2022, I made Glenn Close and the Elusive Oscar, and I'm pretty sure at the end of that video, I talk about her upcoming projects, and The Deliverance was one of them. Like, I already knew of that film's existence in the summer of 2022, and then it eventually, like, dropped on Netflix quietly at the end of August of 2024. Not a good sign. Like, you know, the movie doesn't have to go theatrical for it to be good, but because of the long delay, I was like, okay, yeah, and like, it's really bad. It's really awful. Like, the actors do what they can. Glenn Close is trying. Like, you know, she's not phoning in that performance. Like, I was able to, you know, kind of enjoy certain aspects of that character and what she was trying to do. But, like, the movie's not scary. I remember, like, the second half, it's trying to bring in, like, this ghost element and the paranormal, and Glenn Close, like, her character goes to some crazy places in that third act. And, like, the visual effects are terrible. Most of the performances are pretty flat. And you have Lee Daniels as the director. I mean, this guy made Precious, which is a great film from 2009. And, like, The Paperboy, I didn't love, but there were elements of The Paperboy I really vibed with, I really enjoyed, like the Nicole Kidman performance. We get to a movie like The Deliverance, and you have to ask yourself, like, whoa, like, what went wrong here? What are we thinking? You know, it doesn't work. I was bored throughout most of that movie. I'm a huge Glenn Close fan, and I'm just right now at this moment, I'm hoping she doesn't get another Razzie Award nomination, because I feel like that might happen. Number 3, Argylle.
It's bear hug o'clock! Enjoy the ride!
Ugh. God, this was bad. Argylle, which came out at the beginning of February of 2024. The trailers were pretty decent, and it's got a great cast, including Catherine O'Hara. Like, I will pretty much show up anywhere Catherine O'Hara is, in a TV show, in a movie. I adore her with my full hearts. And it kind of looked like Kingsman, you know, had a Kingsman vibe. I was like, you know, this could be the first really fun movie of 2024. And I saw it in a theater opening weekend, and that was one of the truly, like, most god-awful films I've seen in a long while. It went on and on and on, and it has action in it. There's certain elements to it I guess could entertain others, but I never really connected with the story, with the characters. It all felt wrong from the beginning. After an opening sequence that's okay, it really drags for a while, and it's not funny. The visual effects are horrendous. Like, of that cats, some of the action in the third act, when there's finally at least something happening, you know, the visual effects of Argylle, like, not great. And Bryce Dallas Howard, God love you. I don't think she has the charisma to really lead a movie like that. Her performance in that movie didn't really work for me. And by the end, I was like, this thing is going on for 4 hours. How long has this been playing? It's bad. It didn't work. I feel like it's been mostly forgotten almost a year later since it came out. But I remember. I remember my afternoon with Argylle. And one other thing about that movie. What is going on with Ariana DeBose's film career? What is happening with her? She has definitely been suffering from the Best Supporting Actress curse, because since she won her Oscar for West Side Story in early 2022, she has shown up in one bad film after another. And she's so talented. I'm like, why can't she get a good script? Why can't she show up in a really great movie? Like, I'm still like holding out hope. I'm hoping in the years to come, she's going to be in another fantastic film. She deserves so much better than showing up for like 5 minutes of screen time in Argylle with a character that has nothing to do in the narrative. That was baffling. Ariana DeBose. Someone give her a great script, please. Number 2, Madam Web. So a few months ago, there was a certain movie I saw that I did a YouTube review for, and I called it the worst movie of the year. And in the comments, there were at least 5 to 10 people who said, this is the worst film of the year. Have you seen Madam Web? And to be honest, I hadn't, but I felt like, okay, everybody's saying Madam Web is worse than this movie. I should probably watch it. I did. I think it was playing on Max, and like I put it on, and I was like, you know, this will be fine. Oh my God, Madam Web! Like who made this movie? Madam Web felt like a film that had been made by aliens, like who hadn't really seen a movie before, had maybe seen a few clips and things, kind of knew how humans talked and interacted with one another, and then they wrote a script and turned it into Madam Web. This thing is horrible. Like, it was almost unwatchable, and I understand why some people might call Madam Web the worst film of 2024. I remember seeing all the bad reviews back in February, and I was like, you know, it's like a Marvel movie. It can't be that bad. Oh, it's bad. Like it's got a decent cast, I guess. It's got some moments of action, but like it's so poorly edited and structured and paced. I mean, it felt very strange. It felt like it had been the first cuts of a movie that needed like 10 more like rounds of editing and a better screenplay, better performances. It was bad. It was really, really, really bad. You all were right about Madam Web. I was pretty stunned by its incompetence. I'm like, how did this happen? Like, how did Marvel, let this movie come to pass? I don't know. I still haven't seen Kraven the Hunter, and I've heard bad things about that. It can't possibly be as bad as Madam Web. A decade from now, looking back on this year in cinema, I'm going to obviously think about the movies I loved, the movies I want to revisit time and time again. A film I hope I never have to think about again, that I will definitely never watch the rest of my life, to be sure, is Madam Web. But I still don't think it was the worst movie of 2024. As atrocious as Madam Web is, I still have it in number 2. I still think the number 1 worst movie of 2024 is Megalopolis.
What do you think of this boner I got?
So I reviewed this movie for you a few months ago. I had to go see the latest from Francis Ford Coppola. The guy had not directed a film in 13 years. And he made one masterpiece after another in the 1970s. The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Apocalypse Now. That is a legendary run for any director who ever lived. And, I maybe love some of the films he made in the 80s, in the early 90s, but I don't know what happened with him because Megalopolis, even more so I would say than Madam Web, did feel like it was made by aliens because no scene in Megalopolis feels natural. Everything feels weird and off and not how people talk, not how people interact. The story is convoluted. It doesn't really make sense. There's no suspense, no tension. It got to a point in the second half of the movie where I wanted to close my eyes and not have to look at the screen anymore. I I was just like, I'm done with this. What happened here? I think that's definitely the case of a director who had been toying with an idea, a screenplay, decade after decade after decade, and then he finally just up and makes it. He's like, you know what? I'm in my 80s. This is my last chance to make my big passion project, Megalopolis. Let's do it. Let's hire the best actors I can. We're gonna spend $100 million or whatever it was, like mostly of his own money, I think, and just make this movie. And you know, in some ways, I applaud him just for doing it, right? Like he did it. He made his movie that he'd been thinking about for decades. But did he have to? Did he have to? Couldn't he have just made it for himself? Did we all have to watch it? I think Megalopolis is going to do very well this award season when we get to the Razzie nominations. I think that movie is going to do well there. I have not been surprised to see Megalopolis not receive any, major nominations at like Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, and so on. I think that movie is the biggest swing and a miss I have seen maybe in my entire life. Like, from a director that talented with a pretty good cast, the cinematography at times is interesting, although most of the time, I found it like hard to watch. There was something off about the look of that movie in most of it, I would say. It was such a weird experience watching Megalopolis. At a certain point, I felt like I was like above my body watching myself watch the movie because it didn't seem real to me after a while. I was like, this is Coppola? This is Francis Ford Coppola who made this. What the hell is going on here? So yeah, I mean, if someone were to say, well, if you had to watch one again, would it be Megalopolis or Madame Web? I don't really want to, have to answer that. I don't want to have to make that decision because either one would be a really terrible way to spend another couple hours of my life. But like, if I absolutely had to watch one or the other, I would pick Madame Web. If I absolutely had to, I guess I would suffer through Madame Web again. I think it's much shorter than Megalopolis. There's that. And there's something extremely cringy about Megalopolis I do not want to have to go through ever again. In 2024, I saw a lot of movies, like more than 130 films released in 2024. So many wonderful movies. Some were really great, some were good, some were okay, some were not so okay, some were bad, some were like really bad, awful, like really truly atrocious. And then there was Megalopolis. This movie by Francis Ford Coppola is the worst film of 2024. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think were the worst movies of the year? Do you think Megalopolis was that bad? I'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.